In any event, many scholars, through their analysis of these texts, have been led to conclude that the Deuteronomistic school updated and revised earlier laws, particularly laws in the Covenant Code, but sometimes also in the older legal stratum of P. And they did so in keeping with the circumstances of the 8th to 6th century. So Deuteronomy exemplifies a phenomenon that occurs at several critical junctures in Israel's history. And we're going to see this as we move forward through the biblical text. And that is the modification and rewriting of earlier laws and traditions in the light of new circumstances and ideas. So Deuteronomy is itself an implicit authorization of the process of interpretation. And the notion of canon, or sacred canon, that's exemplified then by biblical texts is one that allows for continued unfolding and development of the sacred tradition. And that's an idea that I think differs very much from modern intuitions about the nature of sacred canons. I think a lot of people have the intuition that a sacred canon means that the text is fixed, static, and authoritative because it is fixed and static, or unchanging. That's not the biblical view or ancient view of sacred canon. Texts representing sacred revelation were modified, they were revised, they were rephrased, they were updated, and they were interpreted in the process of transmission and preservation. It was precisely because a text or a tradition was sacred and authoritative that it was important that it adapt and speak to new circumstances. Otherwise, it would appear to be irrelevant. So it's a very different notion of what it means for something to be canonical and sacred from what I think some moderns have come to understand those terms to mean. So what are the special circumstances and concerns that guide Deuteronomy's revisions of tradition? One of the primary changes is the emphasis on worship at a single central shrine. That's going to represent a great change in Israel's religious practice. According to Deuteronomy, the central sanctuary will be located in a place that God himself will choose. It's not named in Deuteronomy. Or in a place where he will cause his name to dwell. That's the other phrase that's used. Jerusalem is never explicitly mentioned as the site in question, but Jerusalem will later, in fact, fulfill this function according to other biblical texts.